Good morning. I am not Rev Dave. Rev Dave has his day off today. I am Dewey Dewhurst. I am the chair of the Worship and Music Committee, and I'll be leading today's service. Welcome to First Parish Unitarian Universalist of Medfield. Welcome to all streaming in from home, and welcome to all who are visiting. We hope you will stay for social hour following the service. This congregation was first gathered in 1651. This historic meeting house was built in 1789, which was, and still is now, unceded ancestral lands of the Nipmuc, who inhabited this area for thousands of years prior to the arrival of the European colonists. Welcome to this place. Here, we search for truth and understanding. We celebrate life and contemplate its mysteries. Here, we share healing and wholeness. So whoever you are, whatever you believe, wherever you come from, whomever you love, we welcome you to this congregation. Daily, we are called to worship at the altar of many devices. Surveillance systems we let take lead over our every waking moment. We are called by headlines set purely on our activation and by tools that gamify our every human condition. We are not called, we are led. We are not led, we are entrapped. Instead, here, we practice being called. We are called to bring our attention to the altar of unpredictable human relatedness. Come, let us worship together.
Our chalice lighting this morning is called For Our Collective Liberation by Deanna Vandiver. A close-up of one person's hands clasping another person's hands as if to offer comfort. We light this chalice, symbol of our faith alive in this world, naming our vision of collective liberation and daring to remember each other into beloved community.
I now invite you to join me in the reading of our Unison Covenant, lines 1, 2, and 6 today, and you may rise as you are willing and able. Love is the foundation and spirit of our congregation, and we declare that every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity. As people of goodwill, we covenant with one another to share our joys and sorrows and take in connected and nurturing congregation. And you can remain standing for our first hymn, number 53, I Walk the Unfrequented Road. I will now invite forward Karen Wyans for the Moment for All Ages.
Well, good morning. Daddy, you can sit down here with us. So hi, everybody. I'm Karen Wyans, and I've got some notes here. I just want to share with the kids that one of the themes in today's service is the importance of finding community. So I've chosen a poem to share today. It is one that many of you are familiar with. It focuses on one main character who's pretty grumpy and pretty mean. But while I read it today, I'd like you to focus on the other characters in the story. Okay? And the poem is The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. We're going to read a good bit of it, and then in the middle, I'll just summarize a few pages so we can keep it going. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be, perhaps, that his shoes were too tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, grinchy frown at the warm, lighted windows below in their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a mistletoe wreath. "And they're hanging their stockings," he snarled with a sneer. "Tomorrow is Christmas. It's practically here." Then he growled, with his grinchy fingers nervously drumming, "I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming." For tomorrow, he knew, all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early. They'd rush for their toys. And then, oh, the noise. Oh, the noise, noise, noise. That's one thing he hated. The noise, 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 noise. Let's show the adults, in case it's been a while. Then the Who's, young and old, would sit down to a feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, 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 feast. The whole feast, they would feast, on Who pudding and Who rare roast beast, which was something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least. And then they do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand, and the Who's would start singing. They'd sing, and they'd sing, and they'd sing, 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 sing. And the more the Grinch thought of the Who Christmas thing, the more the Grinch thought, I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with it now. I must stop this Christmas from coming. But how? Then he got an awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. So we'll go through and take a quick look through this part of, and skip this part of the poem, but here he's getting dressed as Santa, right? And he's turning his dog Max into a little reindeer. They race down the hill to Whoville in their sleigh, and they arrive at Who house number 1. He starts to steal all the decorations and the gifts, taking the lights while the little Who's sleep in their bedroom. And he even goes to the kitchen and steals the food for the feast. The Who pudding, the roast beast, the Who hash. Only the tree was left. Now we'll go back to Dr. Seuss's poem. And the Grinch grabbed the tree, and he started to shove when he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast, and he saw a small Who, little Cindy Lou Who was not more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter, who got out of bed for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and said, "Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why?" But you know, that old Grinch was so smart and so slick, he thought up a lie, and he thought it up quick. "Why, my sweet little tot," the fake Santa Claus lied, "there's a light on this tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there, then I'll bring it back here." And his fib fooled the child. Then he patted her head, and he got her a drink, and he sent her to bed. And when Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. Then the last thing he took was the log for their fire. Then he went up the chimney himself, the old liar. On their walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire. And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. It was 15:15 dawn, all the Who's still abed, all the Who's still a-snoozing when he packed up his sled. Packed it up with their presents, the ribbons, the trappings, the tags and the tinsel, the trimmings, the trappings. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet, He rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it. Pooh-pooh to the Who's, he said, grinchingly humming. They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a minute or two. Then the Who's down in Whoville will all cry, boo-hoo. That's a noise, grinned the Grinch, that I simply must hear. So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear. And he did hear a sound rising from over the snow. It started in low, then it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, this sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so. But it was merry, very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook when he saw was a shocking surprise. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other, it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons. It came without tags. It came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with the load through the bright morning light, and he brought back the toys and the food for the feast, and he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast. So what did you notice about Whoville and the people in Whoville? Anybody? You can say.
They really like to sing, is what I noticed.
Yeah. What else did you notice about the Who's in Whoville? Anybody?
They knew you didn't need presents or the Christmas tree to have Christmas.
Right. They knew they didn't need presents to have Christmas. Good. Anything else? They're a pretty good community, huh? They did a lot of community things together, right? They ate together. What?
They didn't need the Christmas tree or the presents because it doesn't really matter about what you have. It really just matters about having fun.
Yeah, thank you, Ressa. That's perfect. And I guess I have one last obvious question before we split for RE. Did the Grinch find community? Mm-hmm. He did. He did. Very good. Well, thanks for sitting with me and sharing the moment. And I think it's time to send you out to RE.
Spirit of life and love, of connection and miracles, help us to lead with love and to find small, everyday ways to connect with the strangers we meet. Give us the courage to share the poetry of our hearts with all those who we encounter. May it be so, and may we be the ones to make it so. Please join me for some silent meditation and reflection. I will now invite back up Becca Cornett for this morning's reading.
Our reading this morning is entitled Courageous Connection by Joe Von Rue. Excuse me, young lady. I heard a quiet, familiar voice behind me in a parking lot. Sure enough, I recognized the slight man with his head full of white hair and his plaid shirt. For years, he was a produce manager at a local grocery store. When my shopping coincided with his shift, he'd offer his kind smile and ask if I wanted to hear a poem. I always answered yes, and he'd recite short, sincere poems. It always made my day brighter. Outdoors, an older man and a younger woman sit next to each other. She is holding a folded book or pamphlet, and he's looking at it while talking. He now engaged me with a silly joke, both of us laughing, before rummaging through a box in his car to produce a spiral-bound book. This is my gift to you, fresh from my publisher. We'd met many times before, I told him, but I hadn't seen him for quite some time and often wondered about him. I told him what joy he'd brought to my life in each of these short interactions. He smiled and said, "Well, I hope you'll write me a letter and let me know what you think of my life's work." Then we parted, Joseph and I, me gently carrying his life's work in my hand. There are so many ways to hate. There are so many ways to be angry and to seek out differences with the people around us. There are also many ways to connect. There are so many ways to love and to find joy. So many opportunities to regard life from a different perspective. I don't know what political party Joseph is affiliated with. I don't know if he has a religious identity or what neighborhood he lives in. But what I do know is that he, like me, has a deep desire to connect with people, to share his joy, to exist in a world where a mere stranger is delighted to hear his poetry. What a gift it was to see him today, to connect deeply with a stranger because he felt brave enough to share a piece of their soul with me. I believe that all of us together can and will create a beautiful, courageous, and joy-filled world as long as we continue to hold love at the center of who we are.
I am a millennial, the last generation to be raised with newspapers, landlines, and no ability to pause the TV. Over the course of my school career, we went from cassettes to CDs to iPods, from VHS tapes to DVDs to streaming, floppy disks, zip disks, CDs, thumb drives. My father's a research scientist, and while he often truly needed the most recent technological advancement for his work, he also just loved gadgets and passed along that interest to me. I've had a home computer that I could use for school or to play games since kindergarten. Better processors meant you could do more faster. Next generation video cards meant games and videos could play in higher resolution. Larger hard drives meant that suddenly you could save an entire movie to your computer. I always viewed this steady advancement of technology as a benefit. Yes, change was sometimes a hassle or costly, but ultimately the improvements were worth it. I'm not sure if these advancements have plateaued or if I'm just not enough of a cinephile to tell the difference between HD and Ultra HD, but somewhere in the last decade, new technology has stopped feeling like it's always an improvement. This phenomenon is nowhere more obvious than the internet. The World Wide Web was sold as a technology that would, as the name implies, bring the people of the world together. Electronic mail allowed for nearly instantaneous communication. With search engines, you could easily find information about topics too obscure for inclusion in an encyclopedia. Forums opened up for people to find others with shared interests. Social media allowed you to see what your acquaintances from high school were up to and more actively keep in touch with friends who no longer live nearby. Smartphones meant that suddenly you could have the internet with you at all times. Video chatting let you actually see those cousins who lived out of state without one of the families having to shell out for plane tickets. Never in the history of the world has it been easier to keep in touch with anyone and everyone. And yet, where have we wound up? In 2023, the US Surgeon General declared loneliness an epidemic. Researchers have called it a friendship recession. where people are spending less time with friends than ever before, while simultaneously, deaths from suicide, addiction, and alcoholism are rising. To be clear, this is not all technology's fault. America has been trending towards isolation for a long time. Social clubs, fraternal orders, and union halls, once mainstays of American society, have been losing membership since the 1930s. Even something as simple as older homes often featuring a front porch, whereas modern construction favors a back deck. But prior to the widespread adoption of the internet, even the most antisocial person had to at least do their shopping in person. Now you can order everything you need, even groceries, online and have it delivered to your home. Or if you do still shop in person, self-checkout is widely available, and you can often visit a store without ever talking to another human. While ostensibly, we've moved towards efficiency and independence, it's clear that we've lost something along the way, and that people are suffering as a result. This loneliness, this yearning to be a part of a larger group, and the feelings of sadness and inadequacy are the driving force behind some of the worst issues facing us today. Let's start with social media. Millions of people joined Facebook to see the latest photos, updates from friends and family. Early on, you'd see basically everything your contacts posted in chronological order. People were active with their posts and photos, they commented on each other's things because it felt like a one-to-one digital extension of your social life. People got comfortable maintaining relationships with people digitally, giving likes, the occasional comment, maybe even a happy birthday message. Then pages started to pop up for celebrities or influencers who would talk not about their lives, but about pop culture, current events, memes, or politics. Then you started getting content suggested from people you didn't know or follow. Now you're lucky if every 10th post is from someone you know. To make matters worse, the posts that the algorithm pushes to you are designed to upset you because emotional responses get the most engagement. It's almost universally accepted that social media is not only bad for our brains, but that in many cases it's not even enjoyable anymore. So why do we keep using it? There's three main reasons. First, there's some features that just don't exist elsewhere. Buy nothing or free stuff groups on Facebook are a borderline essential service in this economy. Town or school grade groups often exist only on Facebook, so if you want to participate in local events, you need to be there to hear about them. Second, while people are posting less and less, people do still post big life updates online. If you delete your account, you lose access to all of that. This unfortunately means that while in many cases, the loneliest people wind up spending the most time on social media. Which brings us to the third reason people keep using it. The algorithm is actually pretty good at bringing lonely strangers together, or at least making them feel like it. There's a shocking number of people who wind up letting themselves become radicalized by the algorithm because they find a group that welcomes them in so long as they share a certain belief. This phenomenon of loneliness steering people to groups purely because they are welcomed is not limited to social media. Part of what buoyed Donald Trump to the presidency was his rallies. Whether or not you agree with him politically, it's impossible to deny that he has a devoted and energized base. While some of this base are political true believers, many of his supporters have said in interviews that they are politically apathetic and that it's the energy of the MAGA movement that drew them in, the social element of it. So long as you wear the hat and say that you agree with Trump, you're welcome at his events, and it's a real party atmosphere. Part of what has made his support so consistent throughout events that would have easily sunk other politicians is that supporting him is the only prerequisite to what is essentially a social club. If deciding that you no longer support the man, you're also revoking your membership to the club. And it's the only social club that may have you in some cases. So it's unsurprising that that movement has become a cult of personality. These are examples of unhealthy ways of dealing with loneliness, perhaps not as destructive as coping with drugs or alcohol. But still, these things only approximate filling the need for meaningful connection with other people. One area where this approximation could turn into real friendships historically has been in the workplace. I have many friends from my early in-office days at work, and it's a relatable experience for both my peers and the generations before us. However, remote work has undermined this process for folks who are new to a company, or especially for young people just joining the workforce. Teams calls and instant messaging are adequate tools for getting work done, or even keeping in touch with people that you know face to face, but it's not great for small talk or for building relationships. Much of the return to work movement has come from management looking to keep a closer eye on their workers or to get some value out of their real estate that so often lays vacant nowadays. However, the push from younger workers to return to the office often comes from a genuine desire for connection and collaboration. It's much more fun to work with a team of people you have established a relationship with than it is to just collectively toil away alongside strangers. Sometimes community comes from the place you'd least expect it. The current political environment is incredibly toxic and Orwellian, and people are being left behind, even directly harmed by their own government. In this time when forces seek to isolate us, people have taken it into their own hands to protect themselves and their neighbors. Protests are happening with increased frequency and historical size. Communities terrorized by ICE have begun organizing communication networks to warn each other where and when agents have deployed, or coming together to buy out food vendors' wares first thing each morning so as to minimize their risk of being targeted for detainment. When SNAP benefits didn't go out the door during the shutdown, there were food drives across the nation to ensure that none of our neighbors went hungry. These are acts of political defiance, but also of community building. Close-knit communities are more resilient, and while it would be great if these changes happened under less dire circumstances, there will be a tomorrow with better governance. But the bonds forged with our neighbors will last a lifetime and are so important to good mental and physical health. I know better governance at times feels like a pipe dream. The last 9 years have been especially bleak. The MAGA movement has laid bare some ugly political truths and has highlighted the weak points of our system of checks and balances. But this most recent cycle of elections, where voters surged a blue wave of state and local politicians across the country, that should give you hope. One politician who's been a bright spot in the news and on social media has been Zoran Mamdani. He's obviously personally very charismatic, which is a boon, but he also ran a campaign that was innovative and very tailored to the moment. He made a point to speak with everyday New Yorkers personally and ask them what they want from their mayor. He ran events where people could see him if they participated, while simultaneously being a social activity. For instance, one day he walked the length of Manhattan and talked to people as he went and live streamed. Another day he organized a scavenger hunt across New York City, where if you solved the puzzles in time, you could meet with him at the end. These events made for great content online, but also served to build enthusiasm with constituents. This enthusiasm led to an absolutely massive door-knocking campaign, staffed in large part by young voters. He wound up carrying the Gen Z vote by an astonishing 40-point margin and seeing historic levels of youth voter turnout. The New York Times published an article a few days after the election about how Gen Z staff and volunteers were sad the campaign was over, because it was the first time that many of them had been involved in daily, in-person social activities for a prolonged length of time. And that, again, this element of positive social energy was a big reason for their supporting Mamdani as a candidate. One element of community I've neglected to mention in all of this is obviously organized religion. Organized religion has been a centerpiece of the community going back millennia. But recently, there has been a sustained decline in the rates of religious affiliation across the country and across religions. First Parish has not escaped this reality, but we have been fortunate to have maintained a strong little congregation. I suspect that each and every one of us here would list the church as a foundational, spiritual, social, and emotional support in our lives. I consider myself incredibly lucky to have found a group of such selfless, caring, and generous individuals. So, while I very much understand why people have left organized religion, especially those religions not so enlightened as Unitarian Universalism, it is yet another factor that contributes to feelings of isolation. As UUs, we have multiple principles that speak to the importance of loving community, the interconnected web of existence, and the inherent worthiness and dignity of all people. So, when confronted with an epidemic of loneliness, I would argue that our values call us to action, no different from confronting racism or pursuing climate justice. There are clear risks associated with allowing loneliness to go unchecked, and real societal benefits from fostering community and from spending time with friends. Putting this into action can be as simple as choosing to check out with a human cashier, making conversation, instead of using the self-checkout. It can mean getting together more regularly with friends or relatives to share a meal. For those with the means to do so, it can be extending an open invitation to a holiday party to those who may have nowhere else to go. Get more involved with church events. Find a group that shares a hobby or a sport that you care about. Join a book group. The possibilities are endless, but the returns for your own mental health are just as real as they are for the community at large. Especially in times like these, where so many things feel bleak, finding and fostering a joyful community is not frivolity. It is essential. And in that way, perhaps the trope that the real treasure is the friends we made along the way is not just a silly expression, but a truism that we should take to heart. And maybe that means that any activity that cultivates meaningful friendships is our UU spiritual calling. Thank you. I would now invite forward Duncan Glover to introduce this morning's offering.
Thank you, Dewey. Today's offering will be shared equally with Rosie's Place. Rosie's began back in 1974 as a place where a poor and homeless woman could get a bed and a meal, but it's now grown into an organization that provides a wide range of educational and support services for more than 13,000 women. Rosie's doesn't accept money from the government, whether it be federal, state, or city. All of its financial support comes from contributions from corporations and private citizens like ourselves. Well, today's offering will now be taken. Please donate generously.
Please rise for our closing hymn, number 124, Be That Guide. Friends, our time in this place may have ended, but our connection to each other and this community remains. Together, may we walk the paths of justice, speak the words of love, live the selfless deed, trod gently upon the earth, and fill the world with compassion. Here ends our worship. Let our service begin.